And it is actually an interesting field trying to figure out what they used to do. As long as you're straightforward about it, don't claim that, your grandfather who fought in the Battle of Mactan, something or the other, taught you this. Come on, man. All right. Now, another problem that I see with purely living traditions is some techniques do fall on the wayside. Like, for example, I'm a fairly big guy for a Filipino. I'm like 5'9", 220 pounds, or 200 some odd pounds. All right. But the thing is, a lot of techniques work really well for me because I'm so big. But but most of my students are really, really small girls, literally small girls. So I have to learn the techniques that are appropriate for young girls, and that's what I teach them. Techniques that are not purely based on strength, techniques that are more in tune with leverage, being shorter than your opponent. There are techniques that work so much better if you're shorter than your opponent. Um, so in that context, actually, when you look at it from my students' perspective, they learn one kind of martial art because I never really teach them the knife styles, because most of them are high school students. Knife is more of the advanced ones, and nobody, well, only one or two people have stayed long enough to get to the knife section. Um, that's the thing. And for these girls, as far as they're concerned, this is Arnis. The stick, the sword, that's about it. Okay? Which is really, a kind of a disservice. Well, not a disservice to them, but they're not really getting the full effect of it. And I see that's happened so often with instructors. Like, for example, I'm really good with a stick. That's like my specialty. But I'm not so good with a knife. And I found myself not teaching the knife aspect because that's not my specialty. That's not what I'm good at. So I have this like lack of confidence to teach it on the one hand. And on the other hand, there's also a little part of me that says the reason why my knife skills aren't so good is I don't think they're perfectly appropriate for everyone. If you're a high school student, it's not perfectly appropriate for you to be walking around with a 6-inch knife, especially in the modern context and in the Philippines where you get patted down every time you enter into a public space. So a stick is more appropriate. You're more likely to carry it. You're more likely to use it. So I have these reasons why I focus on the stick so much. And I've noticed that the knife work in my classes have kind of fallen by the wayside. And it happens so often with so many guys. They tend to focus on one thing and then certain things fall on the wayside. Um, which brings me to another point, which is a lot of Filipino martial arts are not taught in a very systematic way. Okay, a lot of it, and I'm kind of guilty of this myself. A lot of it is when an instructor just teaches what they feel like teaching on that day. Like, oh, okay, I feel like teaching, sword techniques. So they start teaching sword techniques to their students, regardless of skill level, regardless of, the amount of time they've spent in the organization, in the club, or whatever. And they just teach that. Okay, and then they get tired of it the next day. Oh, okay, I'll teach you guys some of the wrestling techniques that I know, or how to control the opponent's weapon when you're in the bind, that kind of thing. And again, they would teach that regardless of skill level, regardless of the amount of time the student has spent. And basically, a lot of Filipino martial arts instructors have so much knowledge, but the way they bring out the knowledge is not in a systematic way. And basically, because that's how they learn. I actually learned a little bit in that way. Although my instructor was a little bit mixed, like you would have the systematic section in in the main 2 hours. Like, for example, the main training time is from 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock. Okay, you train all that, blah blah blah, and then all the kids go home. But some kids kind of hang around with the instructor and ask questions. And the instructors are really nice, especially my instructor. He was very, very open about it, and he would keep teaching, keep teaching. So the 30 minutes after the official training time became like the unofficial advanced course, where you get to learn whatever, and he just teaches whatever he wants at that time. Okay, But and I kind of do the same thing. Like like the first hour, first 2 hours I'd be teaching the main event, and then I dismiss the class. But and I tell everyone, okay, if you have any questions, just stay behind, and that's the thing. So again, not very systematic. So it's a weird kind of situation where um, you have people who've been training for 7 years, and they're really good with the sword and the stick, know nothing about the knife, but somebody comes in, and then he's just training for 6 months, but he just jumped right in when the teacher was teaching knife techniques. So his introduction to Arnis is like purely knife, and then these guys are coming from the same school, so the quality of the people coming out or the amount of knowledge that they know would be a bit different. So it's one of those weird things. But again, like I've been saying during the whole video, just live with it, you know. That's the thing. Don't get too hung. And another thing that people from East Asian martial arts that they find weird when they go to Filipino martial arts is there's not a lot of ranks. Even for us, we officially have ranks in my school just to gauge the progress of the students, but we don't really care too much about it. I think it's partially because of the Filipino culture. Like, don't flaunt your rank on me, something that we don't really like that people do. But there we are. So just don't get too hung up about Filipino martial arts being a purely living tradition. You know, just live with it and enjoy it and embrace it. So the next time you're out with your friends, you know, your Kenjutsu friend or your traditional Chinese martial arts friend, and they're raving about how their techniques are thousands of years old, don't get too hung up about it. Don't get into a pissing contest and go, well, mine is also thousands of years old. We just don't know why or how. No, don't get too hung up about it. You know, okay, that's cool, right? Yours is thousands of years old. Mine, I don't know how old it is, but I'm still willing to fight you to test if mine works.